In this video, we are going to explain everything that you need to know to tell the difference between federally legal cannabis and completely illegal marijuana. It's totally crazy, and you will not believe it. Hey, legalizers, it's me, Tom, your cannabis industry lawyer, back again with another deep dive into the insane federal cannabis laws. You want to know the difference between how to tell if it's marijuana, which is a complete federal crime, or hemp, which is literally the exact same plant, but totally federally legal with one small chemical difference. And I'll tell you, let's take a look. Here are two pre-rolls. Now, which one is hemp? The test is simple. The one on fire is marijuana. And if you like pre-rolls lit on fire, hit that like button and subscribe for more news on cannabis legalization. But we aren't going to cover anything crazy like that today. No, no. Instead, we're going to cover everything about how hemp is basically the legal cannabis industry now, and maybe for the foreseeable future because of market forces. That's right. Congress made the definition of hemp so that the line in the sand between legal and illegal is actually a chemical that the plant does not make. Then it made its testing policy for how much THC is in the hemp to be 30 days before its harvest, which means that the vast majority of the THC production happens only after it has been tested for potency to determine if it's legal. That's pretty stupid. But since we're piling arbitrary and dumb things on top of the difference between hemp and marijuana, what's up with the whole 0.3% thing? Well, you see, the 0.3% THC line was not invented by the DEA, nor a team of chemists, or even a small room full of stoned college students. Instead, it comes from a Canadian botanist named Ernest Small, who back in the 1970s was just trying to categorize types of cannabis for research purposes. He picked zero point 0.3 because it seemed like a nice, round, arbitrary number that sort of separated hemp for fiber from weed, which was used as a drug. It was about taxonomy, not drug policy. Nobody, not even Small, thought it was going to be this magic cutoff between harmless rope and reefer madness. In fact, he admitted this, that it was basically a convenient number for the sake of a study, not for the sake of drug policy. Fast forward to 2014. Bureaucrats need a simple rule, because that's how they are. And instead of doing science or having a real debate, they just yoinked it out of the air from some number that Canadian research paper said back in the 70s. So you know it's true. Suddenly, what started as a footnote in Canadian academia became the dividing line between a $30 billion legal hemp industry and a federal felony. So the difference between hemp and marijuana has nothing to do with safety, effects, or even common sense. It's a 50-year-old Canadian random assumption about plant taxonomy. Now, let's talk about science, the kind that determines whether you're a criminal or a hemp enthusiast. Here's the part nobody explains to you at the counter at your local dispensary, but perhaps at your local hemp shop. Cannabis doesn't even make THC that gets you high. No, your favorite plant is not even psychoactive at all. It produces mostly THCA, or tetrahydrocannabinolic acid. That's right. The A is for acid, and it weighs only about 13% of what delta 9 THC weighs, which is why total THC is often calculated by adding the trace amounts of delta 9 THC that is already decarbed from sunlight, heat, or handling on the plant, and multiplying the total amount of its THCA by 0.877. And that's how much total THC it has. Michigan does this already to avoid all the silliness, but many of the states, they don't. They love the silliness. I know my state does. The plant loads up with THCA while it grows. It's only when you bring it to heat, literally by smoking, vaping, or baking, that the THCA loses that little carbon acid and becomes delta 9 THC, the stuff that actually gets you high. The chemical term for this transformation? Decarboxylation. Maybe I pronounced that right. The everyday term, cooking your weed or making it get lit. Think of it like popcorn. THCA is the kernel. Totally different from the popcorn, not particularly exciting, but then once you add enough heat and pop, suddenly you have delta 9 THC or a tasty snack. And suddenly your movie gets a lot more interesting. That means that basically all this so-called hemp marijuana is just THCA flower, just like it is at your dispensary, at least until you light it up. It has the practically identical levels of THCA, practically no delta 9 THC. It's like buying non-alcoholic beer that magically turns into whiskey when it hits a shot glass because, magic. And here's where the stupidity goes off the rails. Federal law only cares about delta 9 THC in the definition of hemp. THCA content, to include that for the calculation of delta 9 level when you test your crop no more than 30 days before harvest. That's the only reference in the federal law. So all the THCA flower out there was never tested after harvest to see if it was still hemp or marijuana because total THC levels. Either way, the second that you torch it, it's game over, and your hemp did just a legal equivalent of a switcheroo. Now it's marijuana, and you're a criminal. Except if you bought it legally, labeled as hemp, and shipped to your door by a company that claims it's in federal compliance, unless you live in a state that has decided to fix Congress's mistake. You may be waking up on one in Texas. You see, we are not telling you that all THCA is legal, provided that you do not light it on fire or put it in the oven at approximately 250 degrees. Also, the Farm Bill only allowed a floor for the federal policy that states could further restrict. So THCA flower or other non-intoxicating hemp products that are not legal in the United States, as many states changed their laws to specifically ban them, despite what many may advertise. They are routinely marketed online, and many online websites will ship directly to your door, saying they're an online dispensary. Another way you can tell the difference between marijuana and hemp is one is sold DTC, or direct to consumer, online, while most marijuana licensing regimes resemble the three-tier alcohol system of producers, distributors, and retailers, with most of their states requiring licensed sales. Actually, all the states requiring licensed sales. But if you've never browsed the internet for hemp, you should. It's pretty cool. This isn't some shadowy operation run out of a guy's basement with a fax machine. No, this is a full-blown nationwide e-com fleet websites, strains of names like Banana Kush, Death Star, Grunts, all the popular strains. And they say like, yes, we ship to all 50 states and this is totally legal. Unless, of course, you live in one of those states that still thinks that, you know, legalizing hemp was about industry and food instead of drugs. Those states are continuing to grow. Many more states keep restricting what hemp is. And this business model that they have, it's pretty simple. You find a lab willing to say that your flower has a 0.29% delta 9 THC and piles of THCA. Or you steal a COA from someone who did that and slap it right on your hemp, and boom, you're not selling weed. You're an agricultural innovator, a real entrepreneur, man. I mean, who needs seed to sale tracking for your marijuana? We could just buy it online and box it up and FedEx it to Alabama. Oh, wait, they just banned it? Oh, no. What about Texas? Oh, Texas too? Well, maybe not. Anyway, you want to talk about mail order marijuana? It's here. It's happening right now. And according to them, it's legal until, you do something reckless like smoking it. You'll see warnings on these websites. Do not combust if you live in Idaho. Meanwhile, actual dispensaries have to jump through way more regulatory hoops than a circus dog. Taxes, security, cameras, vaults, inventory control, badging your employees, access control rooms, everything except for the kitchen sink is regulated in the licensed cannabis game. But if you sell THCA flower and slap a hemp label on it, you're basically the Amazon of getting people high. And there are no shortage of websites doing that right now. It's not the cannabis industry, it's the cannabinoid industry. Everyone pretends that they don't know what's happening, and yet the money just keeps rolling in. In the wild, wild world of THCA flower, the only thing higher than total THC content is the collective willingness to keep a straight face about it being hemp. Welcome to America, where weed is illegal unless you call it hemp and ship it FedEx. Oh, wait, they said don't do that. Just use the US Post Office, but let's not pretend like this whole THCA hemp game is just a bunch of scrappy startups and tie-dye selling flower out of their garages or small business. No, this hemp industry has gone from being the overlooked stepchild of cannabis to an absolute lobbying powerhouse. In my state, Texas, Florida, DC, and fast. After years of being ignored by Congress, the hemp industry woke up, looked around, and realized, well, we're a multi-billion-dollar sector and we have no cost of business, interstate commerce, no IRC 280E, no rules at all, except make sure that you test it a month before you harvest it so that it's not over the line. And then they got organized. They got lawyers, they got lobbyists, and now the hemp lobby is arguably bigger and stronger than the legal weed lobby. Remember, when the Farm Bill used to be a sleepy ag policy thing that nobody read past the SNAP benefits section, except for the actual farmers in the country. Now it's a battlefield because if Congress tries to close the THC loophole, you can bet that every lobbyist that they can hire will make sure that every member knows exactly how many jobs, votes, and donor checks depend on leaving that door open, just like they did in Texas. or here in Illinois. And that's the real kicker. The Farm Bill, where everyone expected to fix the loophole and make hemp laws hemp again, is stuck. Lawmakers are so afraid of picking a side or ticking off either the hemp folks or the marijuana folks, they're just punting. Don't be shocked if we don't see a real farm bill before 2026 or beyond. The longer Congress waits, the more entrenched the hemp industry becomes, and the harder it becomes to tell the difference between legitimate agriculture policy and just protecting a very lucrative loophole. So, if you're wondering why nobody in Washington seems eager to actually do anything about this, remember, in America, the only thing more powerful than bad law is the lobby that profits from that bad law. And now, welcome to the legal absurdity portion of the program. Because if you think it's all complicated, and trust me, it is, we live in a world where the exact same plant can be perfectly legal, or a federal felony, or just a tax free mail order business, depending on whether you swinked or blinked twice, or labeled it hemp, or unfortunately lighted it on fire. This is like quantum physics, Schrodinger's weed. It's legal until you open the box, or in this case, light a joint or turn on your oven. Consider this deal. You buy a jar of THCA flower online. Congratulations. Federally legal hemp, according to the person who sold it to you. The second you want to get high from it, it's chemically marijuana. And so is the DEA going to rappel through your window? No, because they can't even keep up with this circus. We have millions of Americans going from legal to criminals in a series of small fires nationwide because of a random line from a Canadian botanist 50 years ago, trying to set a line in the sand for taxonomy and not drug policy. For this video, we are not considering the absurd result theory that may find THCA flower just marijuana. You can find that video I did at the end of this video if you stick around. Meanwhile, licensed dispensaries, they're paying taxes twice if you consider IRC 280E. They're getting inspected and following more regulations than a nuclear power plant. The hemp guys, they sell stronger weed, tax-free, out of state, no vault needed, ships right to your door, and comes with a free lighter. But that last step may be a little too close to criminal conspiracy. Either way, it's regulatory whiplash, and it's kind of hilarious until you realize that the market and law enforcement and real patients are all being played for fools so that those people can make a quick buck. Quick bucks, beating public health in America since 1776. So what's next? Here's an honest answer. Nothing, at least nothing fast. With the Farm Bill stuck in Congress and the hemp lobby as stubborn as a mule on edibles with more cash than you can throw a stick at, don't expect anything until at least 2026. 90%, I'd say. Maybe by then, lawmakers will have enough kids getting high stories and Sam will care. Sam won't care. The only thing that Sam really cares about is you getting busted for marijuana so that you go to rehab. So that's why they're fighting Schedule 3. They don't care about hemp. Unless, they could say that hemp is marijuana. We essentially have like Sam lobbying against marijuana, hemp lobbying against marijuana, and saying what they do is completely federally legal unless you light it on fire. So can we finally figure out what the difference between a loophole and law is in this world? No, you can't. Lobbyists now want beverages. Lobbyists from the liquor industry are coming in and their stores are starting to stock these products. What should you do in the meantime? Well, hit like, subscribe, because this channel is the only place where you can get the real story on America's wildest drug law circus. Second, stay savvy, check your state's laws and know what you're buying. And hemp really won't tell you, like there's literally no rules on it. We have a COA and we self-regulate. Cool. Anyone that still calls themselves THCA lawyers, you may want to steer clear of. I'm not one of them. Third, if you talk to your elected representatives, make sure that they know that you want a drug policy that makes sense, not a loophole that requires a chemistry degree and a fire extinguisher to prevent mens rea. So drop a comment. Do you know how your hemp could land you in jail? Or have you gotten THCA hemp shipped to your door and think it's awesome? I want to hear your story. Thanks for watching. And remember, in cannabis law, everything's legal until you light it on fire. See you next time, legalizers.